Greetings, Earthlings. I bring for you a retro sci-fi game that takes place on the moon because Earth has been destroyed by humans. This game is pixelated. It was made for the Game Boy Color. However, you can actually play it using a ROM on an emulator. It's done very beautifully, all made entirely by one person, Benjamin McCarthy, who not only is an incredibly skilled artist, but a great musician. He has done all the music and all the art for this game. This game clearly is inspired by a lot of retro and old classics that everybody kind of knows, and has a lot of elements in it. There's top-down, there's platformer, there's isometric, there's parts that are shoot 'em up, there's cinematic scenes, there's faux 3D, there's a demo out that you could play, there's all kinds of things. There's little mini games, there's a pixel art editor, lots of different characters that you can play, lots of different landscapes that you can play, and really just such an incredibly cool game that was entirely inspired by games like Pokemon and Gaia and all kinds of different games. Riven is on here. There's so many amazing old retro inspirations to this, and I had the luxury of being able to sit down and ask Benjamin McCarthy quite a few things about the game that he created. So sit back, put on your VR headsets like TAC, and please enjoy. Welcome to the DL Gaming Podcast. This is our interview special. We've got Benjamin McCarthy here with us, the solo creator of DreamShark Part 1. Started off on Kickstarter, goes a lot to the Portland Saturday markets where you can find him. That's where I found him, which it's... You know, there's so much, I think, to unpack here with, like, your story, to be honest, Benjamin, and I'm so thankful to have you here. I mean, you were a musician, you still are a musician, an artist, and now a solo game developer, and a father. What else is there to conquer? You really hit the whole gambit with everything. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Always fighting to get a good night's sleep with the 8-month-old and almost 4-year-old, but... I'm doing good, actually. Last night was a decent one, so I'm
that's
feeling
great.
all right.
Happy to hear it. You know, you haven't built a VR headset for them to turn into your own little TAC yet?
No, I let my 3.5-year-old try it out one time for like a couple seconds, and he was a little too amazed by it, so I figured I need to give it some time. But he plays the Game Boy. He tests out the DreamShark game, and he just got into Pokemon Yellow.
Oh, perfect. That's so nice. So do you own, I'm assuming, a Game Boy Color, right, to be able to test everything out and stuff. So that kind of leads into one of my first questions, which is why... I love that. And we had the same one. Yeah, I used to have Game Boy Color Green.
Here. Oh, nice.
Which was my favorite. So that's awesome. I'm so glad that you've got the two of them. That's wonderful. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, too, why you would need... to have, obviously, a Game Boy if you're going to make a Game Boy Color game. So why specifically did you choose a Game Boy Color game to make as your first kind of... Because this is your first, like, official game, right?
Yeah, this is the first one. I put out a couple games on itch in the years prior to this. That was kind of warming me up to the whole development process. And to answer the question, I mean, I guess part of it's sort of obvious in that I still have my childhood Game Boy, so I grew up playing those kind of games and loved them so much. But the reason why I went through with making a Game Boy game, it's kind of multifaceted. One, I was beginning to embark on making an NES game with NES Maker, but at the time I was doing it, it was during the pandemic, and the supplier of the actual physical cartridges was totally out of them and would be for a long time. So I kind of switched gears, and since it was still 8-bit, I figured Game Boy is kind of like all that NES has to offer, but even better because it's portable and smaller carts, and all of that just seemed great. And I discovered Game Boy Studio, and the rest is kind of history. Once I jumped into that, I was really satisfied with that whole engine, and the availability of Game Boy cartridges was just there, whereas the NES ones weren't. So those are some kind of logistical reasons why I chose that. But kind of more connecting to the heart aspect of it. I paint. You can kind of see the DreamShark behind me.
I saw that. Yeah.
Taken some time to learn how to do realism and stuff, and it's so detailed and meticulous. So doing pixel art is kind of a fun opposite sort of challenge of seeing if you can convey and communicate the same ideas with minimalism. And there's been so much that I've had to learn through that process. So just all sorts of little tricks that make the pixel art look better that I had no idea about. So it was a fun challenge for me. I guess that's one other level there. You got the nostalgia, the logistics, the challenge of it. And I just find a lot of beauty in the simplicity of it. Coming from a world of making music, doing only 4 tracks for the 8-bit tracker is a fun challenge to try to squeeze and reduce all my music down to that concentrated format there. And the story that I wanted to tell through the game was a big motivator too. So trying to cram as much as I could into that little 4 megabyte cartridge. It's just like the perfect artistic challenge that kind of fuses the left and right brain, the science and the art of it. So hopefully that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, no, and I think you really crushed it. That was something that I was so impressed with while I was playing, because I wish I still had my Game Boy Color. I don't. I've moved a lot, and so I lost it in the move, but I'm so thankful that you have it as a ROM as well. So anybody with an emulator, or I got an emulator on my phone, which turned my phone into looking exactly like a Game Boy, and I have a massive phone, so it looks like a Game Boy, and so it's perfect. But that was one of the things I was actually super impressed with your game, was how beautifully kind of drawn or the pixel art is, because you said that it's incredibly simplistic. I have seen your artwork, so I think compared to your artwork, absolutely I see that simplicity you're talking about. But for a Game Boy game, the artwork is incredibly detailed and complex and gorgeous. I mean, there's like this moment of walking around and I know the searching through the cave and like Tax kind of meditating, and there's these, or Lottle, when you first get introduced to Lottle, and it's like the art that you convey is so beautiful. And also too, I know you made the music. I was like, I recognize this music, and it's awesome how you've been able to do that and create all of this. So yeah, once again, just like really impressed with the amount of work that you have. You've talked quite a bit about kind of supply issues, and obviously taking this grand vision of your artistic vision and kind of condensing it down into how to make it a logistical game. Were there any other kind of large challenges that you faced or that you have faced while making this game?
Yeah, definitely. I had my fair share of challenges along the way. Right now, like a very minor challenge is that we kind of undercharged for shipping to international, to like Germany and Bangladesh and stuff. And we're getting hit with like $35 per box, but we charge 15 for shipping. So it sounds fine on like, a case by case, but it starts adding up after a while. So that was like one blunder that we're kind of coming to realize, is that if we do part 2 on Kickstarter, we got to calculate things out a little better. But besides that, that's just like a minor error there. The real challenges lied in like finishing the game, meeting the deadline. It was supposed to come out in November, but I'm so glad I took the extra month. And once again, part of that kind of came down to logistics with the supplier. The boxes and manuals went through one person. The cartridges went through another supplier who also provided the batteries and the PCBs. The labels through yet another supplier. So it's like you got to piecemeal it all together. And with that, like you run into hiccups with things getting to you on time. So we were getting updates about the boxes and manuals being delayed in late November. And we're like, oh crap, the game's supposed to be out December 1st. So that was a learning experience, but that gave me the extra time to really polish it up. I had another individual who's a backer on the Kickstarter. His name's Spencer Micka, and he was just like a godsend in the end, looking over the whole game, play testing it over and over, critiquing it, and writing, no lie, hundreds of pages of feedback and critique and just amazing play testing notes. And without Spencer's help, I can't see the game being what it is. So that was a challenge to finish it on my own, like right up to the deadline there. I have my wife's help, but she really had to hold it down with our kiddos too. And
yeah,
so that was really tough to like meet the deadline and call it done officially. There were a couple of bugs that persisted, but they were so minor that I just had to let go and let them be. So those were some of the hardest points right up to the end. I thought I was going to finish the game a year prior, but just more ideas kept coming and the bar kept raising for the standard of the game. And I think it was about 2 solid years of development, just kind of every day grinding at it. But outside of those challenges, the kind of more personal ones were having to close the door when my kids were needing me. And those are the parts that were the toughest, was having to put all my focus into this when my kids needed me sometimes, or I wanted to be with them too. So that was tough. And I guess the soul searching to write a good story, a large aspect of the game's story and narrative is about the parent-child relationship between Tak and his family, and the disconnect that's there, and the desire to reconnect and have that loving, healthy relationship. And it takes a lot of personal reflection and analysis of my own life, and it gets very meta sometimes when the story is about trying to be more present and not escape from the hard things that might be going on psychologically. But it's kind of ironic because the game had become my escape in a way, yet it's also focusing on being more aware and more present. So that's a challenge for me.
Oh, absolutely. As you were telling me this, I was imagining that had to have been very difficult to kind of be spending time away from your kid your children while in the game, like Tak is trying so hard to connect with his dad, who is always busy away working. So yeah, like
exactly.
that would have had to have been very, very kind of like constantly like this irony going on in your mind in a sense.
Yes.
But I mean, I think it's worth it. Like you crushed a really great game out in like 2 years, you know, like I know that feels like such a long time, but a lot of companies and a lot of people, even solo devs, will take a very long time to finish their game because it's a lot of work, right? And so I think it shows in what you've made. And I don't know, I'm excited for you. And speaking of promoting it as well too, like how has it been promoting the game at the Saturday markets in Portland? And have you lived in Portland like almost this entire time? Because that's how we met, was at that market.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not from Portland originally. I'm from Massachusetts, which a lot of people just kind of assume is in the middle of the country with Michigan and other M states, but it's actually on the complete opposite side of the U.S., just to clarify for anyone. So it's Cape Cod kind of sticks out in the ocean like a little curly arm, and that's where I'm from. I moved out to Portland shortly after high school with a group of friends. We all got a townhouse together and then slowly divided and, went our own directions, but that's how I got out here. When I was first out, I was, pretty broke, saved up a couple $1,000 working a gas station job before coming out here. I had to kind of quickly get on my feet. But at that time, I guess that kind of carved out this whole artist path, because I was dumpster diving for pieces of cardboard, bought a couple tubes of acrylic paint, the primaries and black and white. Started making little cardboard paintings and setting up outside the Portland Saturday Market, kind of sprawling it out on the grass. And some onlookers might, spend $10 or $15 on a little cardboard painting. So that's kind of where I got my start selling the visual art. I popped by an artist's tent at the Portland Saturday Market, whom I really admired and respected his work. J.R. Slatum for anyone who's listening and wants to check it out. And I showed him some of my paintings that I had in my backpack. And I said, hey, man, can you give me some tips on what I could do next or any improvements? And he gave me some simple advice. He said, just take the black paint out of your mixtures and mix your own dark colors out of like dark blue and purple and stuff. And that was a great tip. It really kind of elevated my art from there, and I felt like I was making progress. Eventually, I stopped sprawling out outside of the market, interned with him, learned the tricks of the trade and learned the ropes. And then for a while, I segued away from that, was doing art lessons for kids, but there was always that kind of fire burning inside to get back to it. The job that I was working is where I met my wife, Chynna, doing those art lessons for kids, but we kind of got sucked into the corporate grind of it all, and the company was trying to expand from 3 stores to 18, so we were tasked with flying out to different states and trying to set up these stores and hire and fire and all this stuff, and I was just kind of losing myself in the corporate grind, so I applied to the Portland Saturday Market, a couple years of doing that, and got set up my own tent, and have been like slowly kind of building over the last 7 or 8 years from that point. But the style of the contents of my tent have changed quite a bit over that time. I was just doing fine art, oil paintings for a while, but I've been making music all the while. So when I happen to have a lot of packages behind me that I got to send out, but when the vinyl kind of came into the mix, or the album rather, that kind of put Tack at the forefront and made him the mascot all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And everything just kind of organically grew from there. So sorry for that long-winded answer of am I from Portland or not? But
no, I love it. It's
kind of
a
journey.
full circle because you started right outside, still being involved, and now you're up there with. I thought it was one of the like most attention grabbing stalls at the market, and so it was so hard not to see. So I was like, "What is this?" so would you say that the game is inspired by the music? Or inspired by the art, I guess, or inspired by both.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say both, but I guess to give you like kind of the chronology, he was meant to be a symbol of the lyrical themes on there that someone younger is always observing us, whether we enjoy it or not. We're always being scrutinized and watched by that next generation, and really the cover of the album was only meant to convey that idea that, you know, we're the role models, or either you're a role model or you could be looking up to someone, but this relationship always kind of exists. And that's really what I was exploring within the lyrical themes and music. And I feel like that's kind of the seed that it all grew from. Tack is, as you kind of might be able to guess, sort of a reflection of my own inner child in a lot of ways. I've got a little brother too, but I'm also a dad now. So just this idea of influencing someone younger, especially, has been present on my mind for a long time. And so I guess you could say that's the core that everything kind of grew out of, which has been going on since before I was at the Portland Saturday Market, just being a big brother. But to try to kind of build upon the world, this should make it a little more clear. Inside of the record, got some lyrics and art and some of the creatures. The axolotl, the tardigrade, the DreamShark. They were all there kind of from the early inception, and a lot of my oil paintings were of aquatic biology, and so they kind of got adapted into the story. So everything kind of grew upon it, the next thing, and had that organic sort of blossoming effect. But it's hard for me to say precisely what inspired it all, but it all kind of inspired each other in a way, the different aspects.
And built and formed a world together. That's so cool. I think that's really awesome. I suppose so. you've been developing, conceptualizing, and building upon TAC this whole time. What would you say, and it could be a few because it might be obviously a tough question, but what would you say that TAC and this whole process, this world that you've created, has taught you the most?
Yeah, there's obviously the lessons of craftsmanship and art and all that, but I guess on a more personal, psychological level or something. It's taught me a couple things. Maybe this was some advice I had heard along the way, but storytelling was something that was kind of like a nebulous. What is a story even? What's the point of a story? How do we, construct or define it? What's the nuts and bolts of it? And so I learned a lot about that, but through trying to write the story, I guess somewhere along the lines, I heard this tidbit about make a story that will change your life. And as a way, I guess, to ensure its quality or something like that. But that really lingered and resonated with me. I don't know if you've made it through the whole game to kind of see the outcome or the climax, but that was something I had to deliberate on for a while and really kind of polish it into its proper point. But it was kind of a gift to myself. Tak and his mother struggle with their relationship, and that's a reflection of real life for me. But the effort to use the story as a tool to actually heal and make a real life scenario better is, I guess, the most important thing I've gotten out of this is that it's not just entertainment. It's not just escape, or at least it's not meant to be. It's for my own healing, and it's for other people's healing too. I hope it can be more of a tool or some sort of therapeutic experience for people rather than just hey, this looks cool and it was fun. But those are really important aspects to me as well. I wanted to make a game that was fun. But yeah, the learning, the big gem that I would take away is that I'm putting all this time and effort into the artwork. I might as well do it for a good reason and try to kind of squeeze the most value and joy and healing and all that out of this rather than just sort of check a box of I made it a video game and it's cool. So that's, I guess, the special thing that came out of all this.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, I knew right away that this was a game. I mean, it is definitely fun and it does look super cool. So I do think that you nailed that. But I always gravitate towards games that are either very meta or thought-provoking, and I definitely think that your game is wonderful with that, so I hope it heals. I haven't quite finished it yet. I've gotten pretty far, but I don't want to spoil things either for any of the listeners, which does lead me into anybody that hasn't played this yet, or for any of our listeners that haven't found you yet, what is kind of one thing that you would like them to know about you and your game?
Yeah, I guess honestly, just kind of building off that last thing, that is what I would like people to know is that it's meant to be fun. So you don't have to be worried that it's going to be overly heavy and a drag or anything like that. It's meant to be something that even first-time gamers and kids can get into. But I hope that it's also very accessible and meaningful to adults too. That was sort of the goal, was to make it a game that's for everybody. So if you're new to gaming, it should be no problem. You should be able to progress through it without wanting to pull your hair out. So I just want to get that right off the bat. And then the other aspect that I want people to know is that, this is hopefully more than just a game experience. Hopefully the art of it will come through, the intention behind the storytelling, and I guess, I hope it can be a sort of a vehicle for people to go through their own changing process, whatever that might be. It is part 1 of 3 as well, so there's more to come. I guess that's one other exciting thing I'd like to convey is that if you feel invested, well, it's not going to just cut off. There is kind of more to roll out. So I'm excited to pull people in at this point when it's just sort of beginning, and kind of take as many people along for the ride as possible.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. That was going to be one of my questions too, is what's next? But yeah, it sounds like 2 more parts are next, and that's awesome. And are you planning on kind of opening up part 2 to Kickstarter as well, like how you have on part 1?
That would be great. That is kind of like the intention. I hope it goes as well, if not better, would be great. That Kickstarter definitely was a huge component of our financial success this year, I guess you could say. This is what I do full time, is just make art for DreamShark. I'm down at the Saturday market every weekend. It's a little iffy there, where it used to be Saturday and Sunday, but ever since COVID, it's been like a little bit of a challenge to allocate the funding, that we all kind of collectively pool our fees together and decide how many days we should be open. But yeah, all my eggs are in that basket of doing the Portland Saturday market. So the Kickstarter was like a gigantic help to us just staying afloat. The market closes in December and reopens in March. So winter is sometimes a financially stressful time, where we're just kind of like biding our time and watching the bank account diminish. So Kickstarter was amazing for 2 reasons: for helping us financially to like make it through these months, and just the marketing of it. It's a well-established site, so it's amazing. Everyone kind of puts their trust into it. The social proof of, hey, I saw your campaign did well and saw how many backers on there, really helps us kind of like win over people in the tent that are just checking it out. They scan the QR code and they're like, oh, you actually had success. All right, I have some faith in you now. But yeah, this is all just to say that Kickstarter is amazing, and we were blown away with how helpful it was to us. We were like going into it a little nervous since it was our very first one, but it helped us financially. It helped with the marketing, and it's just a cool little piece of our history and our story to forever be out there on the internet. And now we have like a little community on there too, that we try to update and keep in touch with. So I definitely want to do it for part 2. When that will be, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're still in the thick of it, of coming off of the like wave of part 1 right now. But yeah, for the listeners, anybody that's not watching any of the video format, like, yeah, you pledged 10,000 of a goal, and you absolutely crushed that. You doubled it with the 27,304 backers. I mean, it's amazing. But I do also feel like I've looked at quite a good chunk of Kickstarters, and the way that you and Chynna have laid out your guys' business plan, the history, the art, what you've put into the Kickstarter. I mean, I feel like you really showcase so much of, this is what we want to do, here's our vision, and really laying it out for anybody to kind of see and follow that with your features, characters, laying them all out, all the different things. I think you did an awesome job. And especially, I loved like your inspiration, where you had all of your, previous Game Boy games. I could see definitely the Pokemon games in here, Bomberman, and like all kinds of awesome old school great like Game Boy games to pull inspiration of. And I felt that playing your game too. Like there were moments where I was like, oh, this reminds me of Pokemon, or oh, this reminds me of Mario. Like, and it was awesome, or this feels like Zelda in ways. And it was a great job. But I thought that your business model of laying this out on Kickstarter was fantastic too. You should definitely do another Kickstarter for part 2, because I hope it's more successful than part 1. But it's awesome how successful part 1 was.
That means a lot. And huge shout out to Chynna, my wife, who she was so involved in making that whole page, the whole aesthetic of it, the little booklet that comes with the physical cartridge too. I was working on it, and she had something whipped up in Canva, and I'm like, all right, yours looks way better and cleaner, so we're going to go with your idea. So she has so much to do with facilitating a lot of this, and probably does not get enough credit in the whole thing. So shout out to Chynna for just helping so much and establishing a lot of the visual identity of like the Kickstarter page and the manual, and I love her dearly, so I just got to shout her out.
Yeah, shout out to Chynna. Well, shout out to both of you two as well, because I mean, like, it feels kind of, especially knowing a little bit more of your backstory and how you met, it's kind of like you took what you learned from corporate and put it back into feeding your soul, right? And so
yeah,
you can feel that and see that in the Kickstarter. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess, man, you've answered so many of my questions. How do you maintain balance between all of this? Because I mean, we touched briefly about like the challenges and how difficult that is. What are some things that have worked really well in your favor in terms of trying to maintain this balance of spending time with your family and working so much in so many ways and still finding creative time for yourself?
Yeah. How do I do it? I guess the like quick answer is that I'm blessed to only have to show up to work the Saturday market 1 day a week, sometimes 2 days a week in the past when they've done Saturday and Sunday. So that was the case all of last year, but this upcoming year, it's just going to be Saturday again for the reasons that I was kind of explaining. So that, I mean, some people come to the tent and they tell me, you know, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I tell them, maybe you just don't have the time on your hands to give it an honest shot. So the amount of time during the weekdays, and I guess now I'll have Sunday too, if I don't fill that with another market or something, that's crucial to like being able to pursue the creativity, just having the time on your hands. And so I try to remind people that, you know, you do probably have the creativity in there. You just got to give yourself a chance to see it come out and foster it a little bit. So that's part of how I balance it. My 3.5, almost 4-year-old Lucas, he goes to school 3 days a week, like a little preschool with 2 other friends. And so from like 9 o'clock to about 3:30 or so, I've got that time. We've got the other kiddo, Maxwell, only 8 months. So he's always around us, crawling and crying and taking bottles and stuff. But we've just kind of integrated that into our lives. But as for Lucas, yeah, when he's at school, those little windows are definitely our time to get all of our packages together. Chynna and I have been working hard to get everyone's different shipments, various specifications ready, but usually we got to do that late at night or when Lucas is at school. That's part of the balance. Chynna's a huge part of it too. She was taking the kids to parks and keeping them entertained a lot while I was grinding away on the game at the end of December. So yeah, we just kind of divide and conquer. And I try to get most of it just done when our kiddos are not awake, because to them, you know, it probably feels like an either or situation. There's understanding there, and it's funny. Even Lucas was, he said, "Daddy's work during the day and Mommy's work at night," just like in general. Just because that's our home situation here, but that's his interpretation of it. But to try to keep things, you know, as happy and healthy as can be, I try to just not be doing too much work in front of them, and that keeps our relationship quality there. But it's good for him to also see part of the behind the scenes of what I do, and it inspires him a lot. Lucas, Max is a little young for it, but Lucas loves drawing and painting. He has tested out making his own video game on Scratch. And I do want him to be exposed to the effort and love that goes into the art, but to not be overshadowed by it. So it's a fine balance.
Yeah.
And being a good dad is just top of my priority list. So kind of keeping the two worlds mostly separated is part of how to achieve that balance for me. But to not be too strict about that too. Like Lucas likes to play and test the DreamShark game on a Game Boy, and So integrating him into the work is part of the solution too.
Yeah.
So
And threading that needle.
Hopefully that kind of adds up to anyone who's got kids and is trying to pursue artistic stuff. But everyone's got a different situation. And Chynna quit her corporate grind. She was doing sort of like childcare management, I guess is the simple way to put it. But that was kind of getting in the way of all of our creative artistic dreams. So kind of we had to take the deep dive into this, and it takes a lot of guts, I guess, to just leave that safety net, the 9 to 5. It certainly felt that way for me when I quit our art lesson job 7 or 8 years ago, and Chynna just quit her other corporate grind 2 years ago. So we're staying afloat, and yeah, we just have to be very conscious about, how we're investing our money back into the business to buy new products or whatever, put it on, the game is a brand new thing that we had to really kind of trust ourselves with the investment on it. The investment of time too was big. So yeah, we just have to make very calculated decisions. We're talking about maybe making a novelty vending machine for our next venture.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it would have, trading cards, the Game Boy game, t-shirts of various sizes, CDs, 3D printed figures, all this stuff, and then just really design the machine to look cool and find someone that will host it. But these are the kind of the calculated decisions that hopefully keep propelling us forward. So this is all part of the balance, but once again, there's my long butt response there.
No, I think that's good. When things get kind of tough though, too, like you said, it's very scary to be going all in and take this big of a risk. Like, how are you kind of keeping yourself motivated and like afloat on kind of like the bad days, right? And like the days where you're like, oh, did I make a right decision? Like, how are you kind of steering yourself back to the vision, right?
Yeah. I guess I perpetually keep creating is part of the answer. Sometimes I have a not so great sales day or something at the market. I usually am able to kind of take it in stride now. I used to have a lot of anxiety at the beginning of starting this, where I'd show up to the market in the parking garage and just have to quickly puke before going to work. Like that happened many mornings where I'm just like so nervous about not doing well, and rent piling up and debt piling up and that sort of thing, that I was super anxious when I began. And it was like an uphill battle mentally and physically sometimes. Now, though, it's not quite as like torturous in that way. But I guess on a bad day, like you're asking, I tend to dive into another creative project. I tend to just kind of keep my hands moving, and but I'm also always very excited to keep working on something. I mentioned the vending machine. That's just one of many ideas. We've got a children's book we'd like to do. We have a making of book that will be like comprised of all the little notes and doodles and things and story concepts. So that's another workload right there. I got the 8-bit soundtrack I got to still record and disperse to everyone. Then I wanted to physically press it on vinyl, so I'll probably have to make a pixel art version of this album cover.
Oh, that'd be
so
cool.
There's just a long list of things that I could keep running with for a while. Here's one other thing I'll share with the audience here. Just started making a giant sculpture of the DreamShark.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
This was just started a couple days ago, so well underway, but kind of see it's got the the texture of the DreamShark. And
oh yeah.
It'll eventually look like this guy back here, but in 3 dimensions. So that is another plan there, is once that's all finalized, I'd like to light it and take photographs, like put a light in its mouth and eyes, and do like kind of the same sort of claymation type photographing as this. So yeah, I just got like 15 different ideas that are just pushing to get out that I'm always going to be busy with. So I guess that's how I push through the like, if I have a cloud over my head some days, I just try to kind of keep creating and have this sort of internal faith that it'll come to fruition and work itself into the brand in some way. And I can just trust in that. So when I have to turn my mind off and stop the anxious thinking, yeah, just creating and getting into that flow state is perfect for me.
Yeah, I come from a background of science, and there's a lot of science behind when you are feeling anxious and the anxiety to go do something. They recommend like physically moving, hiking, walking, exercise, but like there's a lot to creating and writing and drawing as well, especially for anybody that has any sort of creative spark or wants to see if they do. Then you're right, taking the time and like putting the work and keeping yourself busy through that really does help out a lot. So that's awesome. And it's so nice too that you're right. Like what you said, you can trust in that kind of anything that you're going to work on and pivot and create like can work its way into the brand. So you're technically still working. So that's, so that's good.
This is a little bit of a funny side note on that. To avoid post-project blues after such a big undertaking, I have started this hobby. I love Pokemon cards, as it might have already been evident. I've got these kind of inspired by them. But I started photographing just local animals, going out into nature and photographing animals, wildlife.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah. It's perfect. I'm glad that you made him grass type. It's important.
This is kind of like, in my head, I'm thinking like, this is just for fun. This is just for me. And to take our kids out to try to foster that love of nature. And honestly, it's in line with the theme of the game too, of all these people with their escapism and VR, whereas the outer world is kind of turning to crap and they are not paying attention to the beauty that's around them. So I'm trying to kind of, I don't know, walk the walk, I guess you could say, or not just talk the talk, but do what I'm proposing. And, I guess just the funny thing that relates to what we were talking about is I am doing this just for my fun and as just a hobby, but in the back of my mind, the gears are already turning of like, how could I slip this into the DreamShark brand in some way? Maybe there is some way to get these cards as like part of it, but I shouldn't do that. I know I shouldn't. I should just make it for my own fun, not turn everything into work. But to that point before of like, if I just create, somehow it always ends up integrating.
Yeah. But like you said, I think it's really good to have something for you, and even I think well, I mean, you're the creator, you'd know, but to me, it read as that TAC kind of started that way in a sense too. Like the VR and the simulating and building the world was kind of for him a little bit, and then it started getting big, and he started getting on the high scores, and he started being like, oh, well, I can impress my dad, and I can impress the lab with this, and so, and it builds, and it's tough. It's tough to like fight that like, no, this is for me, for my sake, right, and just for my own creative enjoyment. Do you have a favorite character in the game that you've created?
That's a great question, and I haven't been asked it, and I haven't really thought about it, so I'll take a second to ponder what character kind of means the most or stands out. I mean, I think Tak being the protagonist makes him one of the more fleshed out characters, so there might be kind of more depth there to explore. Lottle is quite interesting. She's a mother figure, but kind of, she like has her flaws, but she's kind of this idealized, in a way, version of what Tak is after in his own mother. And I guess that's intriguing to me, sort of the symbolic meaning. I'm really into dreams, my own dreams and dream experiences, lucid dreaming, dream symbolism, all that stuff. And that's a big theme of the game, is kind of like reading the symbols of your unconscious mind in the dream. And so, yeah, kind of decoding the symbolism. Like, I feel like there's a lot of unconscious things being packed into each character that even I'm not totally aware of. So sometimes I have to take a step back and kind of decode what what my unconscious mind is pushing through the artwork. So I guess Laudel is an interesting character. I'm a little kind of like teaser here. There's another character called tentatively called TARDI-G, based on a tardigrade. And I think this will be a really interesting part of part 2. Tack will have this dream character, TARDI-G, who's like an all-powerful tardigrade with flaming eyes and this kind of like ripped chest thing. And he's supposed, the character TARDI-G is supposed to represent like Tack's anger and something that he uses as a defense mechanism, basically, to cope with, you know, the hurt feelings, the trauma, the weight that he carries. And part 2 will be sort of this forest centric setting, and the fire and the forest and the way it sort of interacts, you know, catching the forest on fire. TARDI-G, this character, the anger that's coming from the character, and how Tack is sort of embracing it as a tool, I don't know, a mode of defense, basically. I think that'll be really interesting to explore for the second part of this whole saga. So it's not my favorite character per se, but I'm excited to delve into that one. But the most interesting part to me is like Tack and his family. Tack and his mom and dad and brother, I think, are like the core of the story. And I think that's where the most interest will probably lie, is just seeing how things work out with all of them. But the dream, I think, is sort of the playground where like it could be more open to interpretation from someone kind of assessing those characters and how they relate to Tack's psyche. So yeah, I guess my upcoming favorite character will be TARDI-G, if that stays his name. It's a little bit of a silly name for an antagonist, but that's how he started.
I think that's hilarious. I think it's wonderful.
It definitely evokes some laughter out of people who they're like, oh, is that like Cardi B?
Yeah.
No, not really, but I guess.
No, that's exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's all the interview questions I've got for you today. Like I said, thank you very, very much for meeting with me. Your game is, you know, there's certain games that I play and I love story. I love, like I said, that kind of meta, that deeper meaning kind of game, and especially very artistic games. I like to paint myself. I am nowhere near the level of an artist as you are, but I do love to paint. And so I love a game that has amazing art. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I said I didn't know that. I'd love to check out your artwork. Do you put it out there?
Not really. I will try to find some of my artwork to send and show you. But like I said, it's nowhere near as good as yours. But I also agree that I would say it takes time. I'm like self-taught, just started doing it. I first got started with one of those wine and painting things, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be into this. And then I really got into it, actually. And so got all these different acrylic. I like to paint with acrylic, and I really love to paint things that I'll see underneath a microscope. So also combining that science and art. But I love to flip the colors, make them really metallic or really neon and kind of crazy. But yeah, so I love high artistic games, and your game I couldn't stop thinking about. And so I'm so happy that it's on my phone. I wish I had it. I wish I had an actual cartridge and like a Game Boy Color. I wish I still had mine, but like I absolutely love that I can play it on my phone at least, because I think it's a beautiful artistic piece with a great story and awesome music. So
thank you so much. I just wanted to let anyone know who's listening, the Kickstarter's officially closed up. The game is available on the DreamShark website now, for anyone who's intrigued. I've got the digital ROM on there and then the boxed up physical version with the manual and everything. So just wanted to make that known.
Yeah, and then anybody, I'm imagining, especially starting in March, can come see you on a Saturday and physically buy the game there, right? And talk to you as well. Yeah.
That's a great point there. Yeah. First day of March is actually Saturday, I think. And I'll be there every weekend. You can come by and say hi and get a little extra info about stuff. And I also do little discount deals in person at the tent. So there's that incentive too.